Welcome to the PM for NGOs webinar, and let me put my video so I can just say hello to you. I'm going to be presenting myself and PM for NGOs in a few minutes, and I can see a few names, a few participants that I know personally or sometimes through the internet, and I would like to thank you for your presence here. So we will start, well, it's 8 a.m., so we can start, and I'm going to put these slides on as a main screen so we can move forward. And I'm going to start doing some very short introduction about PM for NGOs, and then I'll talk about myself, and we get to what is important, which is the topic of our webinar. Before we start, I would like to briefly talk about PM for NGOs. Just one slide, just to maybe someone that is participant does not know what PM for NGOs is. So we are an international nonprofit organization that sustains the professionalism for project and program management in our international development sector. We are the owners and the keepers of DPro, the DPro guide and certification. And we have certified over 19,000 people in 160 countries, over 700 organizations has been adopting or at least have someone trained in using DPro and DPro tools. So this is huge for our sector. I know that there's a lot more people that we would like to reach, and I know that we will. But this is a huge accomplishment. My name is Edson Marinho. As I said, I think that some people participating on the webinar already know me, and we already know at least virtually. But let me say a little bit about myself before we start with the topic. So I am Brazilian, although I'm based in Montreal, Canada. I've been the PM for NGOs Executive Director since 2015. I am also founder of a company in Brazil called Teoria da Prática, and I've been working with DPro in Brazil since the very first training group there. So when Juan Manuel and Delia from Momentum trained the first group and the first train of trainers group in Brazil and then Panama, I was part of it, and I'm really passionate about DPro. A little bit about my education background. I'm international relations bachelor. I have an MBA in project management, a post-graduation on distance learning. I'm PMDPro level 2 and PGMDPro certified. And I've been working with projects in our development sector for over 15 years. I always say 15 years, but I think it's already more than that. And I worked for small organizations, large organizations, international NGOs like Child Fund, World Vision, work also with fair trade, and I also start my career on the corporate sector. So I became part of the development sector as something that is really a passion, and I was really happy to combine my passion and my day-to-day work. Before we jump to the topics of our webinar, I would like to ask you to use the question and answers button that you will find. If you move your mouse, you will see a menu. And I would like to ask you to use the question and answers button. And let me explain you why. I might not be able to follow the chat. So if you type something in the chat and I'm saying something, I might not be able to see all the questions there. And if you put the question or your comment or your if you want to make any comment or contribute for the webinar, please just put in a question and answer. And at the end, I will read all the questions and I read all the comments, and I will try to answer with you. Before we start, I would like to check or to run a very quick poll and to check about the certifications of the participants that are here in our webinar. So could you please just mark if you are. You can mark more than one option. So if you are PMDPro level 1, 2, PGMDPro, and other certifications, could you select, please, which certifications you hold? So this is just to give me an overview about the participants, which will help me also to see if I have to go into more details or less details when I'm talking about the concepts we will discuss today. I'm just giving a few moments so everyone can vote. Oh, this is great. 70% of the participants are PMD Pro Level 1 certified. We have one person who is PMD Pro Level 2, and of course we have other people that have other certifications and like PMI and other certification as well. No one is still PGMD Pro certified, so maybe we'll be talking about that, not the certification, but the concepts and how they are important to pursue. Not necessarily through the certification, but also, but at least getting in contact. But certification is also interesting to pursue. So let's then move forward and going to our main topic today. And just reminding you, please use the question and answers button to write any questions. I might not be able to follow the chat because I can see it since I have a full slide on my screen to share with you. Well, we have to start by the academics, or the main definition of what is a project. So a project is a temporary initiative with a specific budget, a specific result, a specific output, a specific change that we want to make in a community or in a group of people, in a group of beneficiaries. And we saw that 70% of the participants are PMD Pro certified, so you are familiar with this life cycle model, the scope, cost, and time, the restriction triangle. But I've seen a lot of people that has all the knowledge, the certification, looking at the board when they start a project with all documents, designs, and tools. Like, well, when I say I saw people, I put myself on this guy's shoes. So yes, I got some projects that I managed some projects when I started. I look at it and said, okay, this is a little bit bigger than I was expecting from what I've learned, from what I've seen on the guide. I truly believe that you might have been through one similar experience like that you've been looking at the documents or looking at the description of the project, and it seems too much complicated from what you've heard that it would be a project. So let's then compare a little bit on what would be a program, and we're going to check all the similarities and differences between projects and programs. As a concept, again, we have the programs are a group of related projects, and that by itself is already a reason for programs to be more complicated or more complex. We're not talking about one project, one initiative, or one group of beneficiaries, one area of work, and one small budget. We're talking about several different projects that combine into a program. Today's webinar, we're not going to be talking about how to combine or why to combine projects, but we are comparing big projects and programs. So we'll look at, if I have a big project or a program, how should I break it down into projects, and why should I break it down into projects? The complexity of some projects resemble me something like this portfolio that has sub-programs, sub-projects, projects under projects. I really like the set of pictures that I use on my PMD Pro. I used to share on my training, PMD Pro training courses, that this is a project. One output, several outputs, one outcome, a single initiative. We are pursuing to make one change in a small group of people that have similar characteristics that are in the same place. If you are thinking about doing anything beyond that, if we have multiple outputs, different locations, if we have a budget that goes across several municipalities or cities, that's a problem. If you look at, they are all trees, but if you look at each tree is a little bit different from the other one. That's the same thing when you think about a program that has projects with the same activities. You think, no, this is a project because the activities are the same, but they are not. Each community, each municipality, each locality, each group has a different characteristic. And maybe we are also talking about doing different activities in different places. And if we have a more complex ecosystem, then we're talking about portfolio. So we go beyond the trees. We're going to develop much more than the trees, and that's the whole ecosystem. Sometimes the portfolio is the reason that the organization exists, or the vision and the mission of the organization. A few facts before we start to talk about the similarities and differences in topic by topic. The first one, and I've been talking about that in many training courses that I'm doing, is that most donors, they call any initiative a project. I haven't seen any bid or call for applying a proposal for a program. You always see that as a project, and then the term has become a term for everything. Doesn't matter the size or the complexity of that initiative, it's always a project. And that's not a problem. Let the donors call that initiative the way they want to. We can actually call it as a project, but we have to treat it as a program. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we have to first think about that when we are applying for a call or bid or we get some funds, that we will receive that as a project, no matter the complexity. Most project managers are responsible for more than one project in the organization. And this is because of lack of people with skills, professional skills, lack of funds or resources, financial resources to hire more project managers. So in my experience, I've seen that almost all organizations that I've been through, the project management never runs or is responsible for one project. So this is another thing to think. So if I'm managing too many projects, maybe I should combine them to manage as a program and give more autonomy for the teams, and we will talk about that as well. And many different organizations, different tools and methodologies and languages for each project. Even within the same project, we have different tools because we have teams in different places. So those are facts that brings us to reflect how we are managing projects and if that's really a project. Let's see a few examples. And those are real examples of projects that I've been involved directly as a manager or as a team member. So the first example is a 65,000 initiative, 6 months duration, to evaluate 3 municipalities' child labor prevention policies, to design strategies, and to implement activities to reduce child labor. So it's a 6-month initiative. The budget's not that big. It's $65,000. You think that's 3 municipalities, it's about $20,000 per municipality. So yes, maybe that's something, as you can see, it's more like a research and design strategy so you can work with one team on 3 municipalities, and that might be seen as a project. It depends on the complexity of each municipality. We might have to split or break it down into 3 different initiatives and 3 different projects and treat it as a program. But my first thought was this could be a project. However, if you look at the second one, it's a 5 million initiative with a duration of 4 years with 50,000 direct beneficiaries to form or to create women saving and entrepreneurship groups in 10 different states. This is the first project that I was responsible for. But this is my first contact with the project management world. And I really got confused because this is not a project. This is a huge program. This budget is higher than some small organizations' year budget. So yeah, I got confused, but it was good because it took me out of my comfort zone and I then started to study and I understood that this is not a project. But as I said, the donor and stakeholders always call it as a project. A 30,000 6 months initiative to include behavior values into sport activities in 3 schools. This is clearly one project, very simple, direct, one change, and as far as we can see without context, it's not that complicated. Okay. But in the real world, how do we really decide what are the characteristics, what are the topics that we have to analyze to decide if it's a project or if it's a program? So how do we decide that it's too complex or complex enough to become a program? Let's talk about a few areas or ways to view complexity or to look at complexity in terms of initiatives, projects, and programs. But the first one is the outcome itself. So what is the initiative outcome? If you have an outcome that it's to promote entrepreneurship and create 10 new small business at one community in Kancherupan, that's Tamil Nadu in India, in 1 year. That looks for me as a project. We have one specific outcome. Okay, that's for 10 new small business. It's over 1 year, but this is simple enough to think that this is one initiative, one outcome, several outputs. If you look at the top one, is to reduce the poverty in the northeastern region of Brazil in 5% over a period of 4 years, impacting 50,000 direct beneficiaries. That is not a project outcome. That's a program outcome. There is so many different activities and tasks and projects behind that 5% poverty that we want to reduce. And I truly believe this is actually something that you can't accomplish in 4 years. You can contribute to that, but not accomplish. So that's a program. So the first complexity area or aspect that we have to look is the outcome. The second one is the size itself. And by size, it's not the budget only. Of course, if you have a huge budget, you might need to break it down into initiatives that are smaller to make it easier for you to manage. And you can give autonomy and tolerance for each team to run that budget. It depends how mature your team and your organization is. So the budget itself is not the reason for changing a project into a program and managing as a program, but it's a complexity aspect. But in how many different locations? It doesn't matter if the activities are the same. It doesn't matter if the beneficiaries would have this similar characteristics. Each location would have a different context. And that by itself is reason enough to have different projects, because each one's going to lead or deal with different contexts and different communities. So yes, you should break it down into different projects and manage as a program. And what is the number of beneficiaries? Maybe you work in one municipality, in one community, in one place with a small, medium-sized budget, but you have a huge number of beneficiaries, which maybe is a reason for you to break it down, the project, into small initiatives and call it a program. But again, this is just one aspect. I'm talking about combining all those complexity aspects. And the other one is the duration. So how long is the initiative? Is it 6 months, 1 year? Anything that goes beyond 1 or 2 years, I start to wonder if it would be better to break it into different initiatives and treat it as a program. I'm just making a note here. That's something that happened to me in the past in one of the evaluations that I've made, that a permanent project is not a program. So it's very common that community-based organizations, they offer workshops or training, sports training, sports activities, music activities, and they call that a program because it's a continuum project. So that's not a program. Remember that this is actually the dialogue that I have with the person that I asked about the projects and programs of the organization. They said, we have a sports program in our organization. And I asked, how many projects does it have? And they said, just one. It's soccer training activities that we run every year. And then, well, you can have that as a service that you offer. You can treat that as a project that is renewed, but that's not necessarily a program. Well, moving forward, we also have to think about other aspects of complexity. The diversity of beneficiaries characteristics. So it's not about the number of beneficiaries, but the diversity. So maybe your project is working with children from 0 to 6, adolescents, and their parents. So maybe you're working to a too broad audience or too broad beneficiaries that it's worth for you to separate and treat it separately as different projects. The pause between activities. Sometimes you have activities happening in the beginning of the year, and then you have like a 3 or 4 or 6 months pause for many reasons. Maybe because of a emergency problem that we had, maybe because it's a season that you cannot run many activities because it's the season that everyone is working. I see that in the northeastern region of Brazil, where the fathers, they go to a different stage to work every crop season. So the project has to stop and wait 3 to 4 months to resume all the activities. So I'm not saying this is necessarily one reason to treat as a problem, but depending on how often that happens and the distance between activities, you might want to break it down. And the last item on this slide shows that in this case of the pauses, you have to really consider if you are working with stages within the project or there are subsequent projects. And I truly believe that depends on the outcome, going back to the first complexity aspect. So if the outcome is to create a small business, form groups, train people, develop a small business, you see that those different trainings, different activities that you might separate into different projects. If you have one outcome that is run microfinance training courses, well, that's one activity. Maybe you can split into stages because you have pauses, because you have different moments that you're going to be running the trainings, but it's not going to be worth to break it down into different projects. Well, we talked about the differences, but again, in the real world, how we make things happen and how we treat them, what are the tools, what are the differences between how we deal and manage projects and programs. The first one, and very obviously, is the log frame. So the log frame for a project is different from a log frame for the program. I remember when I was trained in the DPro, I think almost 10 years ago, and my trainer, he said, oh, the goals on the project, they contribute for the program. So you do not really deliver the goal on your project because it's part of something bigger. Well, finally, we have something to look at when you look at the program guide, the PGM DPro guide, that shows that each project goal is related to the program outcomes. And we have one outcome, several outputs, and several activities in the project, while in the program you can have a program goal, which is a long-term, really connected with the organization vision and mission. We have the program outputs that are also connected to the outcome of the projects, and we have the project itself. So this is one way to see it. I'm not saying this is a mathematical formula that you can use on your log frames, but it shows at least the difference on levels for projects and programs. And of course, that's not going to be something that you just connect directly. You might have projects that contribute to programs activities, or they even contribute indirectly to something that the program is trying to accomplish. But the important message here is log frames are different, and they look at different levels of the change we want to make in that community, on those communities. Still talking about the tools, so what about the identification and design? Do we have the same approach? Do we use the problem tree? And actually, we're going to have a webinar next month specifically about the identification and design for programs. So we will see what changed between project and programs. But just from my personal experience, the approach is different, but we can use the same tools or similar tools. So we can use the problem tree to assess a community and identify different problems or one big problem that we will treat as a program. The approach might be a little bit different because you might be working in different localities, different municipalities, in different places, different countries sometimes, and you might have to have a longer period for identification and design. We will talk about that next month in more details. But yes, the tools could be similar, but the approach might be different. It probably be different. The risk register. So what are the risks that impact on the project, on the program, or in both? It's going to be impossible for the program manager to be taking care of risk that affects the project in the front. That's going to be too many risks on too many different projects. So what the program manager has to be careful or to manage in terms of risks are risks that can go across projects and risks that can affect the program as a one entity or one initiative. The project risks, it's project manager responsibility. Same thing happens with the issue log. So Well, as a project manager, I always caught myself trying to deal with day-to-day project issues when this is something that the team should resolve. So thinking about the program level, it's, again, impossible for the program manager to go through all small issues that happens on the activity level. He or she must be looking at issues log as two things. One, what kind of issues we can learn from and share with other projects and share across the program. And second, as a systematization document, so we can, at the end of each project, end of each phase, we can look at the issues logs and learn from it as a lessons learned for the program, the other projects, and the organization itself. The planning is different. If you look at project and programs, phase, stage, and milestones are different. You can have phases in the program which the project are still going on. So in project, usually when you have a stage, you always have like a milestone point, a break point that you stop and start something else. You might have just small activities, administrative activities. On the program, you will have projects that go across several different stages. Milestones are also different. In a project, usually you have something really concrete to deliver when you get to a milestone. In a program, we have a set of concrete deliverables and a set of things that are ongoing. As I said, some projects are going to be ongoing. So I would recommend looking at the PG and DPro guide to look at the staging planning that we have there. And the PMDPro guide is being rewritten. We're going to be including the stage planning, stage implementation as a concept as well. This is part of the agile concepts that we are incorporating on PMDPro. The work breakdown structure is also different, of course. I might, as a program manager, go through details on my WBS, the things that are direct activities from the program, like administrative activities, planning activities, but this is something for the project managers to deal with. I will give them, as a program manager, big packages. They will break it down and give smaller packages to their team and so on. The monitor, evaluation, accountability, and learning is also different, but it's really, really connected. What is important to check is what are the levels of indicators that I want to see in the program. Do I want to know how many workshops I had on a specific project as a program manager? Is that information really important to me? Is that really important to the program or what I want to accomplish? Who is accountable to what or to whom? So are the project managers accountable to the program manager or to different donors? So think about the complexity of the program manager when he has to deal with accountability coming from the projects to him and share that with sometimes different donors, sometimes different stakeholders. And of course, the learning process is very important in the program. When you have projects that are isolated and working by themselves and being implemented by themselves, you might have some learning across those projects. But if you have a program, you can create a structure, a real structure, a repository of learning that can be shared across projects, not only across projects ongoing, but future projects are going to be part of the program. This is, for me, the most different part of program management. And this is as well as happens in the project. So when we talk about project management, we're talking about making people do what the project needs with some limited level of authority, or they have some autonomy, they have everything is participatory, and this is good. But in the program level, we have to think that's completely different. Well, first things first. The program manager must have a higher level of experience and skills, of course, than the project manager. Sometimes the project manager, he or she has to know specifically about one topic of one area of work or one community she's going to be involved with one outcome. The program manager must understand different topics, areas of study, areas of working, social areas, and how they interact between them. And he has or she has to know how that would connect with other aspects in the organization, like the mission, vision, or the theory of change. So the experience is clearly more on a higher level if you think about program management. The second one, and this is really, really important, is the autonomy and tolerances for each smaller initiative. So as a program manager, you have to be careful on not micromanaging what's happening in each project. Each project has its own manager. It has its own team, its own outcome, budget. So you have to train this, you have to mentor those project managers, but you cannot be micromanaging projects. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to really do the work that you have to do, which is trying to combine all the projects in one bigger impact and managing how they interact among themselves. Jump into the last one. This is connected to empowerment. So you have to empower the project manager and his or her team that they own that project. In my experience, I've seen a lot of that, and it happened to me that I had a program, a project. When I went to the field to make a field visiting, I found teams that they did not feel that they are responsible for what they're doing. They're doing like, I'm doing activities and I'm moving on. And this is Edison's responsibility. Well, it is, but at the level of what's going to be accomplished and delivered by that initiative, it's their responsibility. They have to own that. And that, of course, goes through communication, the way that we relate with the teams, and training, of course. Well, the governance is also different in program and projects. So in projects, usually the governance is more simple. It's a small committee or sometimes one sponsor. In a program, usually we have a bigger or more complex, let's say, governance, hopefully not bigger. A governance with 50 people, 50 people in a room will not work, but maybe more complex because we have different donors. Maybe we have projects that have different beneficiaries or group of beneficiaries or relation with the government. So it's going to be a little bit more complex in terms of program governance. The decision gates is going to be also need to be also really well established with responsibility and who decides what. And the closure of each project is also very important. And they are different within a program because maybe a closure of one project represents the start of a different project, or the learning coming from one to the other, or even the team come from the one to the other. So the people management, I think, in my opinion, is the most difficult jump that you go from project to program management. And of course, that is related to everything, to the tools, to the language, and to the training, and to how you relate with your activities, outputs, outcomes, and all. Well, we talk about differences. Let me talk about two things that I think that is very important in terms of similarities between projects and programs. The first one is the principles. So yes, in projects and programs, we should have the same principles. We have, in both of them, you need to have a governance that works well. You need to really have a well-structured governance. And that's why the program manager must have a lot of time to deal with communications and stakeholders, because he or she will be responsible for the governance at the program level, but he or she will be directly connected with the governance with each project. He's going to be part of it, part of the governance. It must be participatory. Both programs and projects must have the involvement of donors, beneficiaries, more importantly, beneficiaries, governmental, local partners, and so on. It must be comprehensive. So I cannot think about one aspect of the program only as I cannot think about one aspect of the project. So I cannot think about just finance management on the project and forget about all other things. I have to be much more comprehensive. I cannot think only about the outputs and activities on the project level. And the program level, I would have to think not only in a comprehensive way, but in a way that I integrate all of those. So in the project, I have to integrate different activities to accomplish one output and to get to my outcome. On the program, the integration is much more on the outcome and output level, but it's much more complex. So the design of a program, when we design all the indicators and how they are related and are integrated, is very important for me as a program manager for the program to accomplish what we promised. And of course, the program must be adaptive. If a project that is a 1 year, there's a 1 year duration, has to adapt to change that might happen over those 12 months, think about a program that goes through 2, 3, 4 years. So we will need to adapt, we will need to use agile concepts, agile tools. We will need to use a phase stage planning. We will use to use stage adaptation. Projects will come out or we will end, will be closed with different results and deliverables that we are expected in the program level. You have to adjust all the projects to try to accomplish what was not accomplished, or you can use something that is already accomplished by one project to reduce the scope of the other. So the adaptive on program management is much more important than in project, not taking out the importance of that on the project level. And finally, of course, the methodology and tools must be aligned. Of course, I'm bringing the DPro and DPro as an example, of course, because we are talking about PM4NGO's methodologies. But you have to, if you don't use those two methodologies in full, if you use tools from other methodologies that are supplemental to your work, which is good, you need to have a common language. Everyone on the teams of each project and in the program team needs to understand log frame in program project level, WBS, issues logs, risk registers, monitoring plan, and so on as one concept, one understanding. Otherwise, project will not talk to the program and project will not talk between projects. Talking about that, if you've been a company, what PM4NGO has been doing on the past couple of years, we launched the program guide, the DPro. And if you look at the DPro, it's a little bit unaligned, not aligned with the DPro. And the reason is we are rewriting the DPro now to have an alignment with DPro content, with DPro phases and stages, and actually some concepts are going to need to be aligned. So I just would like to ask you a few more months of patience, and we will have the DPro republished it's expected for January 2020, and it's going to be much more aligned to the DPro. But the good thing is, until then, you can still work with DPro, and if you work with DPro, that's going to create some kind of discussion and interaction, and talking about what is different between those two guides now would actually be a nice conversation. But do not worry, we will be publishing the DPro in January 2020 in 5 languages. Portuguese, English, Spanish, French, and Arabic at one moment. That was going to be much more aligned with the program guide. Well, we are coming to the end of our webinar, and I would like to ask you to use the question and answers to start writing your questions or your comments. If you want to say anything, I can read for the participants. So please use the question and answers while I'm just saying a few final notes. And as final notes, one thing that's important is, and I've been talking about that all the time, is call each initiative the way you prefer, or the way it works for you, for your team, for your organization. So if you want to call it project, if you want to call it big project with components, or project with sub-project or sub-initiatives, if you want to call it program with sub-programs, it doesn't matter. You have to use the language that works for you, that works for your team, but you need to establish a common language. Otherwise, people will be, different teams will be confused on what is really a project and what is really a program. But break it down. Do not keep one initiative. Let's not put names like project or big project or program. Do not keep one initiative too complex. Break it down, or even combine small or very small initiatives to create synergy. So to create, to help using better use of resources, better use of tools, or better application of tools of process like monitoring evaluation. So combine and break it down. Don't feel afraid of doing that. Regardless on why or how the donor calls the initiative, you can do it the way you want. And finally, select the tools and connect them between projects and programs. So yes, you can have specific tools that's going to be used only on project because they are in activity level. You can have specific tools that's going to be used only on programs because that's something that works for the program team and doesn't really work for the project team. But try to combine and connect as much as possible through a common methodology or through a common language. So let me see now what we have here in questions and answers. I'm going to stop the share. No, I don't need to stop the share. I can keep it. So we have here a couple of questions that I'll try to answer. The first one is size and level of organization also determines whether it's a project program. Of course it does, Bemal. Yes, I mean, if you have a small organization that gets a project that's a little bit big, it's difficult to use those words like big or small. But if the project is too complex for that small organization, you might want to break it down. And again, this is how you call it. You might keep calling it a project, but break it down in smaller initiatives to make it easier for that organization to manage it. It's not about the size only of the organization, but the level of knowledge and experience. If it's a new organization, I would really recommend to break it down initiatives, break it down the project in sub-components, or call it a program and break it down into projects. I think I just closed the wrong one. I'm opening another one. So if it says, I need a little more clarification on the difference between program and portfolio. We can talk about that. I think that deserves another webinar. But the portfolio is this, just in a small, very quick words, the portfolio is the group of all projects and all programs that one organization is running or developing. So while a program has a group of projects, and you can have more than one program in your organization, the portfolio is the group of everything. So you put all the project programs on the portfolio. Portfolio management is really related to the organization management itself. So when you decide what's going to be your portfolio, you are actually deciding what you're going to be working with. Let me give an example. One organization portfolio might have a program on education for children and might have also a support project for elders. So my portfolio involves those two areas and those two types of initiatives and fronts. And this is my portfolio. That's what I deliver as an organization. I hope that's clear. If it's not, I'm going to take a note and let's set up a webinar to talk now about talk more about portfolio. Okay. The next question. It's from Ferdinand. With regard to common language between PMDPro and PGMDPro, are you planning to issue a white paper, at least to start preparing us? Yes, and I'm glad you asked that. So first things first, we're going to have a PMDPro ending on January 2020, which is the current version, and a new version coming out. Of course, when the new version comes out, we're going to give we have a delay to shut down the previous version. Because practitioners, training organizations, organizations that apply PMDPro, they need some time to adjust and adapt. And we will have a white paper that shows the difference between the previous and the new version of PMDPro. This is one. The second one is a white paper that shows the connections between PMDPro and the PGMDPro. This is going to be much more direct and clear because they're going to be related. But yes, we will list what we have changed on the PMDPro. That was because we now have the program guide. So we're going to be, for example, we're going to be focused much more on the lower level of a problem tree or lower level of a log frame than we would be focused on the goal level of the project or even the outcome, because now we know that's part of the program level, and the PGMDPro brings the tools and the techniques to deal with. So yes, we're going to have papers, white papers, and actually, Ferdinand, we're going to be also asking you, all of you practitioners, to help us with that. To read the guide and give us feedbacks and comments. It's going to be launched in 2020, but of course, we have a period of time that we want to be collecting feedbacks and adjusting as as we can, not everything, but what we can, we're going to be adjusting on the program guide and the new DPro guide as well. And Dell is asking, one changing program is communication between projects. Based on your experience, so what do you recommend to maintain a good communication between project managers? And Della, this is not an easy question. I mean, if you think about trying to get a good communication in a project, it's a challenge itself. In a program, that's a huge challenge. It kind of sounds like trying to push one tool for everyone or push one technique for everyone, but due to the complexity of a program, I would say that you need a standard communication tools and channels. Each project might use a different communication tool or communication channel because it's what works on their context. But in the program level, you will need really well standardized process for communication. Otherwise, you're going to be lost between all the messaging different. You have to use WhatsApp, email, Slack, Skype, Zoom, Google Hangouts, and so on. So you get crazy. You have paper documents. You have things developing Microsoft or Office, things developing in the Google Forms and Google spreadsheets. And then you have something that was made in a paper and it was scanned and sent to you as a PDF. So if you see that, stop, try to establish standard communication. Do not cut out the creativity or what works for the projects in their context, on each one of the contexts. But as a program, you need to have standardized communication process. One example that I always like to say when I'm talking about communications is an experience that I had. I was managing a program, and I have two project managers talking by email, and they put me in copy of something that I really didn't have to be in copy of that. So it was like someone asking for a document and copied me just to know that he was starting that process. So the other one said, okay, I'm going to send you tomorrow to you. So the first one said, thank you. And I was in copy. The following morning, the second one sends the documents. And here you go. You document you asked yesterday, the template you asked yesterday. The other one said, thank you. The other one said, we are welcome. You are the guy. No, you are the guy. No, I can't do anything without you. And at a certain point, I said, okay, whoa, guys, please do not copy me on your brotherhood or your communication. It is important to set up small things like do not copy the program manager on everything. Do not copy the project manager on everything. And use the same channels and tools. Ferdinand is also saying here that there is a big challenge in many local NGOs in different state program and project. As a result, they fail to recruit appropriate candidates. I thank PM NGOs for initiatives to bridge the gap. Yes, Ferdinand, exactly. Sometimes you get like a call or bid for something that is called as a project by the donor. And the result is we go then try to hire, or we open a call to hire a project manager when we need someone with different skills and different experience. And sometimes you just don't find the person with the right skills and experience for managing a program. But you know what, that's okay. That person is a project manager. That's going to be okay. Well, it might not. If the person is willing to develop her or his own skills and learn how to manage a program, that would be okay. Otherwise, it's going to be complicated. It's going to fail. As you said, the gap is how to differentiate those two concepts. And again, call the way you want. You can call in the way you want, but just try to break it down, make it simple for managing, and use the right tools for each level. Looking at the clock, it's, 1 second. So we are on top of the time that we set. I'm still open for more questions if you want to make it. But just a quick information. We're going to be running this webinar in Portuguese at the end of January. We're going to run it in Portuguese again in February, and then we're going to be running that in Spanish in February. So the next one is the 30th of January. I don't remember the dates right now for the following ones, but that's going to be in partnership with Rede Colabora. And it's going to be in February, again in Portuguese, so it's going to be 2 editions in Portuguese and 1 in Spanish with my friends Juan Manuel and Delia. So we want to, this is something that we are trying to do as well at PM for NGOs. We are trying to run webinars in many languages, as many languages as we can to bring the information to more people. I would like to thank you all for your presence here. Thank you very much for being here. I saw a lot of interaction on the chat, but unfortunately I couldn't follow by the answer the questions. If you have any more questions, do not hesitate on sending to us at PM for NGOs or suggestions or recommendations. We'll be very glad to hear from you guys. When you close the window, it's going to be open a contact form so you can send your comment or your question. Thank you very much for taking the time to hear us, and we hope that we can produce and continue sharing webinars to help you and your team. And see you again online on the next time. Thank you.